We will start with this session. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Vishwas Gunatra, and this is the third session of Android Study Jams, and the second session on the second track, that is our prior programming experience track. So basically, in the previous session, we have covered some of the advanced topics like data binding, view model, and live data. So in that session, we have mainly covered the three topics, and in this second session, we are going to cover two more advanced topics that will help you out to make your Android apps and also complete the Android Study Jams program. Okay, so what are the prerequisites? So basically, you must be familiar with an OOP language. Okay, means you need to know all the concepts like how to define a class or how to write a class, how to call a function, and also you should know what is a thread. Okay, and also comfortable using any IDE and also familiar with navigating GitHub because in this program you will be having several code labs in which you will be encountering many GitHub codes. So you need to download some of these codes and also work upon them. Okay. Okay. So in this today's session, we are going to see some of the glimpse of Room database, and also I'll walk you through some of the advanced topic like Kotlin coroutines and asynchronous programming. Okay, so in this session, we won't be using Android Studio much. We'll be practicing some of the programs into the a website named Kotlin Playground. So this is basically an online compiler which runs your Kotlin code in the browser itself. For those people who haven't created your account and haven't started with the Android Study Jams program, do visit this link and create your developer profile today itself. And also, you need to get started with the prior programming experience track. And like, if you want to get certified by DSC PDPU for participating in Android Study Jams, make sure you have completed both the tracks. That is the first track, new to programming, and the second track is prior programming experience track. Okay, and then you can get started with the Kotlin cons that we have already discussed in the previous session, and then you can get started with the course. Okay, so in the prior programming experience track, there are two units, Kotlin fundamental basically. So first unit may consist of some repeated, code labs from the first track itself. So you also need to get those badges. So in total, you need to complete all of these pathways, and each pathway has, the quizzes and code labs, and you need to pass the quiz and get your badges. So in total, you need to have total 16 badges to get certified. Okay, and after this session, so basically this is the last session we are conducting on Android Study Jams, and we will be circulating a Google form regarding the submission of proof that you have completed the Android Study Jams program, and you also have to submit some screenshots regarding this badges of your developer profile. Okay, so let's get started. So the room database will be explained by my uh, fellow facilitator, Mihir Shah.
Yes. Okay, so I'll start presenting. Is my screen visible?
Yes, Mihir.
Okay. So what is Room database? Room database is basically an add-on to SQLite database, and Room database is specially built for Android apps. Its main motive is to make offline-ready apps, which require less boilerplate code or minimum boilerplate code in comparison to SQLite. It also provides some good functionalities like compile time checking queries, which gives us compile time safety. It also has easy migration of database. Um, it also allows us to use observable data like live data. These are some advantages of Room database over SQLite database. It also has a higher testability degree, which means the testing of the database is very easy as compared to SQLite. And these are some basic fundamentals of a Room database, which will enable you to make offline ready apps. Okay. Now Room is a database object mapping library that makes it easy to access database on Android applications. Now, rather than hiding the details of SQLite on which the Room database is based on, Room tries to embrace them by providing convenient APIs to query the database and also verify such queries at compile time. This allows you to access the full power of SQLite while having the type safety provided by Java SQL query builders. Moving forward, there are three major components of Room database, which is the database, entity, and DAO. DAO is a data access object. So now entity is a table in the database. DAO is the method through which we will perform actions or operations on the database. Okay, so the database is an annotation. Annotation is basically telling the compiler that this is the point where the database is located. We will annotate it in this way. So for example, this is the annotation for entity. This is the annotation for DAO. Now this will just prompt the compiler that this is our DAO or this is our database. Okay, so this annotation marks a class, a database. It should be an abstract class that extends Room database. Now at runtime, you can acquire an instance of it via room.database builder or room.memory database builder. This class defines the list of entities and data access objects in the database. It is also the main access point for underlying connections. So this is database is the main part, and the entity and DAO are its functions to make it simpler. Now entity, as I mentioned earlier, entity is a table in the database. So this annotation marks a class as a database row. Table is also known as a database row. Now for each entity, a database table is created to hold the items. The entity class must be referenced in the database entities, which will, let me just show you. Okay, so this is our entity, which is in the file user.kt. Okay, the user entity is in the file user.kt. And now when we look at the database, it is referenced, all the entities are referenced like this. So this is the important part to connect the database and the entity. So each field of entity and its upper in the superclass is persisted in the database unless it is denoted otherwise. Okay. Now DAO, or the data access object, as I mentioned earlier, provides us with methods to manipulate. We can also delete functions and basically manipulating the database. So this annotation marks a class or interface as a data access object or DAO. Data access objects are the main component of the Room that are responsible for defining the methods that access the database. The class that is annotated with database must have an abstract method that has 0 arguments and returns the class that is annotated with DAO. While generating the code at compile time, Room will generate an implementation of this class. So it will make it at compile time. Okay, now looking at this example of a simple example of a simple database. Okay, so inside the user.kt file, we are defining a public class user, and inside the entity, we know every table should have a primary key, which will be its identifying key, which is compulsory to be defined. So the primary key is defined as UID. Now, column info annotation is not necessary. This column info, we can give name to this column. For example, this last name, this column will not have the name last name. It will have last underscore name. However, we have not annotated anything here. So this column will have the name itself. Okay. Moving forward, this is the DAO file, user.dao.kt. It is an interface file, and it has the methods defined and annotated by query. Now, this query can be the same as you have learned in SQL, if you are familiar with that. And it defines functions to implement those methods. Insert, delete functions. These are the same as you can find in SQLite. Okay, and to, in this database file, app-database.kt, we are annotating the database, and then we are mentioning the entities that it has, which is the user.kt file. It has to be compulsorily declared as an abstract class, and the function inside of this database has to be an abstract function. And this is the requirement of a database. Then how to create an instance of app database? Then this is the syntax for it. We'll declare a variable. We'll reference it through database builder, and we'll give the context. In this case, it is the application context, and then app database in class, and then we'll give the database a name, and then we'll build the database. This is the syntax for making an instance of app database. So now we'll understand with an example. So first I'll show you what the example is. So I've making a notes app. So in this notes app, basically, is my screen visible, the emulator?
Yes, yes, Meher.
Okay. So this is a basically notes app where we can delete or enter notes. So basically I can just add A, B, C, D, whatever, and then I'll submit, and this makes it this offline. We can access these nodes even if the data is off, and this is the beauty of Room database. So if I kill the app even, and then I load it again, you can see this this is present over here. So for implementing this, I had used Room database. So we'll take a look at its code. Okay, so this is the entity that I have made, or the table, and I have given the table name, which is optional. I've given, if you do not mention the table name, then the class name is given as the table name. And then column info and the primary key. Do not forget primary key. It is mandatory, and without it you will have an error. And then column info is shown here, and text and the ID. Then I have also declared a DAO, which is a data access object. It is interface, and as I've not given it any name, it is note DAO. All right, and then I have declared three functions: insert function, delete function, and query function. And I only want to, from a particular case, I only want to showcase all the nodes that I have in a recycler view. So I have selecting everything from this database. This is the query. And this is the database where I have listed all the entities, array of. Okay, and this is the version, and this is the basic syntax that you need to follow. All right, this is not necessary, volatile. And here is the build function of the database, room.databasebuilder and .build. Okay. And talking about the dependencies that you need to add to implement Room database, then these are the dependencies, which I will copy paste for your reference. I'll just put it in the chat box. So for your reference, I have put it here. These are the dependencies required to implement Room database. Okay. Now we'll take a look at its code lab to make your work easier. So you will find the code lab in the unit 2 section of the prior programming track. In the database and recycler view section, when you open it, you have the first as a create room database code lab. Now here you will be making a sleep tracking app. So we'll take the app overview first. Track my sleep quality. Okay, so you will build the database portion of the app that tracks sleep quality. And yes, so this also has many components that we studied yesterday, which are view model and live data. These are also Jetpack components, and these are very important in designing modern day Android apps. Okay, so someone has a doubt till now, or everything is clear? Okay, so I'll continue. So what will we learn? So we'll learn to create a room database to store the data offline. Okay, and we'll manipulate it using DAO or data access objects using SQL queries. Okay, so we'll jump to the first task, which is to download all the starter app from the GitHub of this. Okay, so this is the GitHub where you will find the Gradle file and all the starting materials that you require for this app. Okay, and then yes, the room database does all the work to get from Kotlin data class to entities that can be stored in SQLite tables and from functions declarations to SQL queries. So step one will be creating an entity. Entity is a table in the database. And this is the good explanation that DAO will communicate with the SQLite. An entity will be a part of the room database and DAO will be connected with entity. But the communication with SQLite will take place through DAO. Okay, so we have declared it as a data class here, and this is an instance. Okay, and then we'll be creating it as an entity, and we'll be giving it a table name and declaring the primary key, which is the most important part. Without it, you will be showing an error. Okay, and these are the imports which will be automatically imported by the IDE because our Android Studio is a smart IDE. Okay, the entity primary key column info is not mandatory as I have previously told. It will only give, in this case, it will only have the functionality to change the name of the instance or the column. Okay, this is how we create the entity. Now, creating the DAO. So, to create a DAO, we'll define an interface. So, how do we declare an interface? First of all, to declare an interface, you will left click here and you'll go to new Kotlin class or file, and there is this option of interface, and like this you will be declaring an interface. For example, we can make it a test interface. Okay, and that's how you declare an interface. Okay, yes, and then these are some functions which is necessary, which are insert functions, update functions, query function, and it will have a function associated with it. This is the query which is required for this particular case. Okay, now we'll be creating the database finally, which is the last step and which is the holder of both the uh, entity and also the DAO. Okay, so we'll be creating an abstract class as mentioned earlier. The abstract class is required for database and also abstract methods. And we'll be extended it with room database. Now, as it has written here that you will see an error because we have not mentioned the entity here in the parentheses. And to mention the entity, we'll just simply use this method. Okay, then we'll declare an abstract variable. Everything inside of this database will be abstract. Uh, okay, and then companion object will be declared volatile and the instance will be declared. And this is very good documentation and you will be easily able to follow it. I'm just guiding you through it. Okay, we'll return the instance. Instance is the database, so we'll be returning them. And then you'll also find this code for a reference. If you are facing any issues with this, you can compare it with your code with this code. And if you still face any issues, then you can contact me or Vishwas. We both will be available. Okay, and this is some homework which you can optionally do. And after completing all of these, you will be facing a quiz. Okay, you have badge. Okay, you will take the quiz and then you will earn the badge. Okay, that's it from my side. I'll hand it over to Vishwas now.
Okay, so thank you, Meher. And now we will start with asynchronous programming and Kotlin coroutines. So before getting started with it, I would like to inform you that if you haven't attended the previous session that was yesterday, so don't worry, the previous session's recording is already been uploaded in the YouTube, and the link is already being shared. I hope so. Here, if not, then please share it again. Okay.
Yes, I'll share it again. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so our next concept is what is asynchronous programming and Kotlin coroutines. So, asynchronous programming is a form of parallel programming that allows a unit of work to run separately from the primary application thread. So, I guess you must be familiar with the word thread or the jargon thread. So, what is asynchronous programming? And first, let's discuss what is synchronous programming. So, synchronous programming is not a parallel. It is a programming pattern in which the processes or your program runs sequentially, but asynchronous programming runs in a parallel programming way, such that each and every task must be parallel to each other and should not block each other's way, okay, for executing. So when the work is complete, it notifies the main thread. So our normal, in general terms, each and every programs do run on the main thread, and as well as whether the work was completed or failed. So in any language, whether it is Kotlin or other language, multi-threaded language, what it happens basically when you run a program or when you write a program and when you execute it, the program is mainly executed on the main thread itself. And there are numbers of benefits of using the asynchronous programming. So basically asynchronous programming is used whenever you wanna, you wanna fetch some network data, or you wanna get the data that should be running on a separate thread rather running on the main thread, because main thread will be busy executing the other task. Okay, and we won't be, by using main thread all the time, our application slows down. But if you are building a big application, let's say, and there are many network requests, so to improve the application performance and responsiveness of the application, we need to know what is asynchronous programming. Okay, and first let's see, I will give you a short example. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is the Kotlin playground I was talking about. You can also go to play.kotlin.org. Okay, and the link to this website is also mentioned in the description. So here you can see there is a Kotlin main function, and here is a simple println statement. Okay, and it prints out the hello world. Okay, here you can see the output of the following function is hello world. So basically any program written in Kotlin will, or any other language will be working or will be executing on the main thread. So if we want to know that on which thread this particular function is executing, so for that we'll be printing out the thread name, so we can get to know that whether it is uh, working on or executing on the main thread or not. Okay, so I will put some information in this println statement. The thread name is, and now I'm going to print some of the predefined or pre-built methods and variables of thread. Okay, so to do that I'll be using this syntax to print out the variables. Okay, so this online compiler also provides you some suggestions. So thread dot current thread. So the current thread is a method, and the property is dot name. So this sentence should print out the current thread that the main function is executing on. Okay, so here you can see first our first print statement is being printed out, hello world, and then the second print statement prints out the current thread on which this whole Kotlin program is executing. So the thread name is main thread. Okay, so in asynchronous programming, what we do, we basically put the code in asynchronous programming in such a way that we don't want the main thread to be executing it, because in main thread, if you wrote a code, it will be delayed in such a manner that your request won't be successfully satisfied in the given period of time, and your app won't be responsible sorry, your app won't be responsive till till that time. Okay, moving on to the Kotlin coroutines. So a coroutine is a concurrency design pattern that you can use on Android to simplify code that executes asynchronously. Okay, so a coroutine is specially used in Kotlin and also in several other languages. And coroutines were added in the Kotlin in the version 1.3 and are based on established concept from other languages also, as I mentioned. On Android, coroutines help to manage long-running tasks that might otherwise block the main thread and can cause your app to become unresponsive. I mentioned, like if you are implementing some network request in directly on your main thread in your main program, then your app might become unresponsive and it can lead to blocking the main thread, and your execution won't be completed in the given time. So over 50% of professional developers who use coroutines have reported seeing increased productivity and enables you to write cleaner and more conscious app code. Okay, so what is a basic difference between a coroutine and a thread? So if you know some of the concepts of operating system, basically a thread is also multitask, but it is preemptively multitask, while our coroutine is cooperatively multitask. So what is the difference between cooperatively and preemptively? So basically, preemptively the thread works in such a way that it will block other processes to execute first, but coroutines do not prefer to block any thread and they are non-blocking. Okay, so it runs in such a way that they execute parallelly to the main thread and other threads. It won't block any execution. Okay, and for that, let's understand it with an example. Okay, so here in our main function, let's say we'll take some other function and name it task1, and let's take another function named task2. Okay. So now in our first function, let's print out something. So we'll use println statement, and then I am from task 1. Okay. And in seconds function, we'll be printing I am from task 2. Okay. So we have two functions in our program, task 1 and task 2. So the first function says I am from task 1, and second function says I am from task 2. Okay. So we'll call that function, both of the functions in our main function. Okay. And then execute the program. Okay. So you can see the task 1 function is called first, and the task 2 function is called after that. So these both functions are basically now running on the main thread itself. So to check that out, we can print out the name of the thread on which they are running. So thread is, okay, let's do the same thing that we did in the previous program. Thread dot current thread dot name, and we'll copy this statement and we'll also paste it out in the second function. Okay, so now let's run the program and let's see whether it is running on the main thread. Yes, you can see the first function is printing I am from the task 1 function, and then it is printing out that on which thread it was executing, that is the main thread, and also the second function is also executing on the main thread itself. So for using coroutines in any Kotlin function, whether it is a normal Kotlin program or you are using Kotlin with the Android application, it enables you for the parallel tasking, and it won't block any of the other threads. Okay, so for that we'll keep this function as it is, but for using a function in an Kotlin coroutines, there is we need to define the function as suspend. Okay, suspended function, it is not, they are known as suspended functions. So for that we have to declare the second function or any of this function with the suspend keyword. Okay, before this fun keyword. Okay, so now we have declared our second function as suspend function. Okay, and now we'll remove this and we'll call. Okay, so you can execute or start a coroutine like this in a global scope. For that, well, I'll write the keyword global scope dot launch, and then I will call the suspended function, that is task 2, and then I'll call our normal function, that is task 1. So uh, in Kotlin coroutine, only suspended function can be used, and also a suspended function can also be called by another suspended function. Okay, so now we will execute the program. Okay. Okay, here you can see suspended function task 2 should be called only from a coroutine or other suspend function. Okay, so there was a syntax mistake. Okay, someone is waiting in the lobby. Okay, okay, just wait a second. Okay, and now okay, so first run it, then we'll call our first function. Why is it showing the error? Okay, it is showing this error because we haven't called the library which is used to integrate the dependency or import the dependency of Kotlin coroutines. Okay, so for that we will first import the dependency, that is import, then Kotlin X, not Kotlin but Kotlin X package, and then we will write coroutines. Okay, coroutines dot star. Okay, so now our Kotlin coroutines are successfully imported, and now it will execute. Okay, so right now you can see we have defined our coroutine, and the suspended function, that is task 2, is called from the global scope launch, that is our coroutine function, and it is the output is I am from the task 2, and its thread is also printed out. So here you can see the thread is default dispatcher worker 1 and at the red coroutine hash 1. So it indicates that this particular function is running on a separate coroutine, that are a coroutine thread, that is this default dispatcher worker 1, and the first function, that is task 1, is running on the thread main. Okay, so here you can differentiate that both functions are not executing on the main thread, but they both are executing on the different way. Okay, parallelly. And if you want to if you want to delay this, then you can also do like 1000 L, and let's say while printing the function of first task 1, if we delay the Kotlin coroutines that we are calling the task 2 function, then the programming, the JVM of this particular online compiler will stop, and we won't be getting the output from the task 2. So we'll also tell the first function that is running on the main thread to sleep for 2 seconds. Okay, thread dot sleep to well. Okay, here you can see first the first function is called, and then the second function, that is our suspended function, and which will be only used in the Kotlin coroutines, is called, and then you can see the particular thread is being printed out, that is of the second function, and due to the thread dot sleep, the thread of the particular main thread is printed afterwards. So you can see the function that is only used by coroutines has not blocked the execution of the main thread function, okay, the task 1, and it can easily execute parallelly. So the basic idea of Kotlin coroutine is whenever you want to fetch any network data, or let's say you want to fetch the data from the APIs, okay, then you can easily use coroutines for that, and it won't slow down your application. Instead it will boost your application. And Kotlin coroutine is not only dependent, or it is not like that you have to use only for the network calls. You can also use for some of the business logic of inside your application to make your application run faster, or to if you have a particular code in your application that needs more priority and has a higher priority to run, then you can also use the Kotlin coroutines, which will execute the parallel code to the other code in your application. Okay, so it has many different functionalities. Okay, so moving on. Okay, So now we will jump to some of the code labs. Okay, so we'll be starting in the unit 2. So unit 2 has many different applications that are based on some of the fundamental concepts. Okay, first let me sign in. Okay, and this the code examples and this all codes and also the codes of previous session will be shared on the GitHub, and link of the session recording and this code will be available to you through mails. Okay, okay, moving on. uh, let's go to this pathway that is
Hello.
connect to the internet. Okay, yes, Nishan.
I am not getting what is the you have write a function, suspend function. What is it is actually doing? I'm not under getting.
Okay, let me explain you. When you are declaring a normal function, right, using the fun keyword, okay, let me show you with an example. Okay, so here is a normal function. See, function task one, okay, it is simply printing a statement, right, okay, and this is the function but has a suspend keyword. Okay, so when you want to, do the parallel processing of two different business logic code, okay, then they are not possible while you are synchronously executing your program. Okay, so this whole idea is based on the asynchronous programming. So whenever you want to do multiple things in a single time, okay, then you have to use for the particular Kotlin language, there is a concept of Kotlin coroutines which enables you to run the two different codes, okay, in your application at the same amount of time parallelly without disturbing each other execution time, or without blocking each other. Okay, so for that, like in any programming language, we define a function just simply as it is, and especially in Kotlin, when you want to use coroutines to for the parallel, parallel execution of particular code, then you have to, if you are using a function, then you have to specify the function with a keyword name as suspend, and such functions are also known as suspended functions. Okay, and you have to use this syntax, that is the global scope dot launch, and inside this scope you have to declare, or you have to call this function in order to get it executed.
You mean if we want to multitasking on application, so we use this function, right?
Yes. Let me give you an example. If you have an application which doesn't deal with any network request or APIs, but let's say your application comprises of two algorithms, okay, and those two algorithms have to run parallelly, or the other option is they can run in a sequential manner, one after another. Okay, but your requirement is you need to execute both the algorithms at the same time. Then what you will do, because whenever a function is defined, just like I did, your task one was there, right? Task one, and next I was calling the task two. Okay, so basically the first task one function was getting executed, and then the second task was getting executed. Okay, but while using the Kotlin coroutines, you don't, it is basically for the asynchronous call of any function or the code. So sequential, that is one after another, is not happening here. Okay, because your requirement is basically to execute both at a parallel pace, okay, without disturbing each other. Okay, did you get it?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nishan. Okay, so we will start with the pathway connect to the internet, and I will guide you how to use this coroutine and fetch data from the APIs. Okay, okay. Okay, so basically, in each and every application that you will be developing in the second track, that is prior programming experience track, you will need this. Some of the basic fundamental advanced concepts are like view model, live data, and data binding. So do go to the video in the YouTube, and all. And if you have any doubts regarding data binding or live data, and if you weren't present at previous session, don't worry, we'll also solve your doubts. Okay, no issue. And let's start with the app overview. So basically, it is a real estate on Mars application which will fetch data, okay, from the API using coroutines. Okay, and okay, so in unit 2 of this particular track, you have to do, you have to download some of the predefined or pre-coded applications from the GitHub, and then you have to code the rest of the part of the application on your own. And not on your own, but this code lab will guide you through each and every step of it. Okay, so explore the Mask real estate starter app. Okay, so basically it shows some of the images in a recycler view. Okay, so if you are jumping into the prior programming experience track, you should know what is a recycler view. Okay, and using these network libraries like retrofit and other libraries, you can fetch the data and populate it into the recycler views. So explore the Kotlin source files and data binding. So basically you have to first download this application, download the Mars real estate starter app, and open it in the Android Studio. Okay, and then connect to a web service using retrofit. So what is retrofit? Okay, so retrofit is a networking library which enables you with a type safe HTTP client for Android. Okay, so when you want to fetch any data from other servers like APIs, then you can use this retrofit library. Okay, and there is some particular dependencies for it. Here you can see the dependencies are given, and you have to add these dependencies to your Gradle file and sync the Gradle file. And once this implementation of the dependencies are successfully accepted by your Android Studio, you can start using this library to get the or fetch the data from the API directly into your application. Okay, so this retrofit is a very useful library. Previously, when the retrofit wasn't launched, there was a library named Wally, but the functioning of both these libraries are same. But the retrofit is somewhat easy to use library, and if you know the REST web service, okay, REST API, it is basically used for that purpose. Okay. Okay, so after syncing your Gradle files, implementation of the Mars API service. So basically, you have to declare your API just like the in the given syntax, and then you have to create retrofit variables object. Okay, and retrofit dot builder and that dot add convert factory. Okay, and you have to specify the base URL that will be the URL of the particular API or the data you want to get from the servers. Okay, and then you have to apply each and every of the functions and other syntaxes to call the data. Okay, basically retrofit is used inside an coroutine. Okay, because whenever you want to call some data, okay, let's say this is a function, and let's say it is getting data from the internet. Okay, but if you are not using coroutines with it, it will not call the data asynchronously. It will execute the code sequentially only. Okay, so first whenever your UI will be loaded, then your network request will be sent to the server, and then server will respond some data to your application, and that responded data will be converted from the JSON to the object, and then your application will show the data to your application user interface. Okay, so by sequentially executing this task will be chaos, because you don't want your users, your application users, to run away from your application, and because your application will be much slower. Okay, if you won't be using the asynchronous programming concepts. Okay, so retrofit is just a library to fetch your data from the internet and in the form of JSON. Okay, JavaScript object notation if you aren't familiar with it. Okay, and then we'll be using coroutines. Okay, view model. Okay, so coroutines have different implementations. Our implementation was of the global scope. Okay, and if you are familiar with the view model, then it also has view model scope and other scopes. Okay, it can be used for different scopes also. Okay, and yes, this is the response. This is the view model scope in which they have implemented the try catch block to identify whether the response was success or whether it was a failure. Okay, so using Kotlin coroutines just like this, but in a view model scope, they fetch the data using the API and using the retrofit library in the API, and then they converted the JSON data into the object, and then using the view model and other other concepts, they applied that data into the UI. Okay, and the solution code is available right here. So if you are stuck somewhere, you are welcome to contact us, and if you want to solve by it yourself, then you can download this app, complete solution code, and you can also compare it with the complete code that is provided by the Google people. Okay, and yes, also what are REST web services? If you don't know what are REST web services, and also you don't know how to pass the JSON, what is JSON passing, those concepts are also given in a short summary, so you can get familiar to it. Okay, and next we will move to the other code lab, that is load and display data from the URL. Okay, so our once we fetch the data from the URL. Okay, so this is one image they have fetched from the URL and being displayed. But yes, and they are adding the glide dependency. The glide dependency basically is for showing the images or loading the images. Okay, and yes, once just like I said, once in the view model scope, using the Kotlin coroutines, the data is being fetched, and the by using some conditions, it is compared that whether the data was successful or not. And after that, the next step is to update the view model. Okay, and what the view model will do, it will update the UI elements. Okay, see here they have printed out the particular image URL, okay, from the data that have fetched from the API. Okay, and creating a binder adapter and call the glide is a library. You can also search out glide is a very famous library. Okay, then they are using the concept of data binding to bind it with the image views in our application. Okay, and then they will be displaying the each and every image that is being fetched from the API into a grid display using the recycler view. Okay, in a scrollable list manner. You can't say list view, but it is a recycler view. So the list view is an old concept, and recycler view is more efficient than list view. Okay, and just like I explained you, they will be they will be showing the images into the application. Okay, so you will see each and every concept in detail. Okay, and we are just explaining we are just clearing your concepts, but first you need to get familiar with data mining and view model, then you can switch to Kotlin coroutines and other stuff. Okay, and then you can attempt the quiz and earn your particular badge. Okay, so this was the one pathway. Okay, let me get back. Okay, yes, and the next pathways are repository and work management. Okay, so in this pathway, what basically you will learn what is a repository and what is a work manager. Okay, and there won't be any application inside it. And lastly, your last project or last application you will be developing will be a GDG Finder app, that is Google Developer Group Finder app. Okay, let me show you the code labs, and it is also named as design for everyone. So basically this pathway covers some styles and themes, okay, which you can work upon by improving your design skills. Okay, so app overview. So your final application will look something like this. Okay, and Android styling system. So it is basically the Android styling system: text appearance, theme, default style and views. Okay, so you can easily get a good documentation of each and every styling and use attributes for styling. Okay, so yes, we do use some attributes like text size, text color, then font family for text views and other stuff. Okay, so you can easily modify or manipulate your text views or other views by using the code. Or also you can go to the attribute section in Android Studio, and there each and every property are defined, and you can simply go and change the values according to your need. Okay, and next is use of themes and downloadable fonts. So yes, Android Studio allows you to download some of the fonts available, but yes, there might be some situations where the fonts you need for your application won't be there. Okay, then what you can do, you can also download the third-party fonts, and you can import those that font file into a font folder. Okay, into inside a resource directory inside the our project directory. Okay, and basically styles are used for defining the appearance of your application. And nowadays, we have both dark mode and light mode in our Android phones. So basically, you can define each and every style according to the different modes of your application and Android phone. So whenever you switch your application from dark mode to light mode, or from light mode to dark mode, the particular views and the particular color of views should be changed in a particular manner. So basically you have to code such XML attributes for the following modes. Okay, and yes, okay, this is basically RTL support. And yes, support night mode. Just like I said, you have to use the theme dot material components dot day night dot no action bar. So day night represents both the modes, night mode and the light mode of our Android phone. And material components, so that there is another library for styling our components and views, that is the material UI library. Okay, which is helpful to design application in much elegant way. And yes, the final project can be also downloaded from here. Okay, so you need to complete each and every the code labs presented here. And after completing the code labs, you can go for the pathways and finally attempt the quiz. So make sure you complete all of these 16, you collect all of these 16 badges. I will show my developer profile. Okay, okay, anyone has doubt and has not understood any concept of retrofit, or let's say Kotlin coroutines? Anyone?
Hello.
Yes, Nishant.
As you told about retrofit, if we want to show an image on app from other servers, so we use
Yes.
this function retrofit. Okay.
Like yes. Let me elaborate more. If you are using Firebase, right? Are you familiar with the Firebase?
No.
Okay, Firebase is a NoSQL, service of database and other functions and other
Oh,
services
yeah, yeah,
from
yeah. I know.
Google.
I know.
Yes, yes,
Huh.
yes. So basically, what Android developers generally do, they work with the Firebase, and they usually store the data like images into the Firebase storage, and particular image that is being stored in the Firebase storage has a URL. Okay. So while using the Firebase, you don't need to, you don't need to use any network library specially for that, because Firebase itself has some functions that can easily fetch data. Okay. But when you are using, just like you said, you want to fetch data from a server. Okay. Yeah, because the server will be providing the data in an API form. Okay, whether you are working with SQL, MySQL, or other any SQL, database servers, then you have to use, implement the API, and from that API you can collect the data using this library. But it is not compulsory like you have to use the retrofit. You can go for other options. And Android itself has in pre-built some classes and functions for this, for fetching the data from the APIs, but they are not like such efficient and much faster. Okay, so the retrofit is the latest library, and it is the most fastest and most reliable library, which throws less error, and the speed of fetching the data and showing it into the objects form into our UI is much more better while we are using retrofit.
And if I want to available one particular picture or video offline on my app, so there is any other function like retrofit or
Like you want to download.
no, in like we download application from the Google Pay and there is some inbuilt images like the background image. So if I want to make some like this, so
Like, I'm not getting your point. Like, if you want to download an image that you have seen inside your application.
yeah,
No. This is basically like, let's say I will give you one example. There is one API for, some volcanoes that are currently active or non-active. Okay. So what they do, they collectively form a server in which they will assign each and every data, and that data is available publicly to each and everyone. And that server will provide you an API, and you will fetch that data. Or let's say you have, there is an API for fetching random images. Okay. So this retrofit basically is used for network calls. Okay. So whenever your application wants to, communicate with other devices on the network, like basically why one devices will communicate with other devices whenever they want to share data. Okay. But when you want to, download the same the image that you are seeing on your application, or that is designed by the developer for the application, you cannot download using those libraries. Those libraries are used for fetching data from the other server. Okay. That are, yes, if you are fetching the data from the other server, it is downloadable into your phone.
okay,
Okay,
thank
because
you.
just like I showed you in the Mars real estate application, whenever those images in the recycler view are fetched, basically they are downloaded into your application, but they are on the temporary memory structure. Okay, whenever you will close your application and you will open your application again, then the whole data will be refreshed, and again a network request will be made to the servers, and those server will send the URL of those images into a JSON object form. Okay, and then you will convert those JSON data into the normal data, which your application can understand and easily display on the screen. Okay. Okay, I hope I cleared your doubt. And anyone has another doubts? Okay, I guess not. So, like, you have to complete this Android Study Jam program before 25th, or the last day is 25th January. So today itself we'll be circulating a Google form. If you have completed the Android Study Jams and you have secured those 16 badges, then please get the screenshot of your developer profile. Okay, I'll show you. So here is the, if you want to go to the developer profile, then there is a settings icon, and you have to click on it and then go to Google developer profile, and a page like this will appear on your screen. and then you have to sign in with the same account that you signed in for the study jams. Okay, it will take some time to load. Okay, so yes, here is my developer profile and you can see all the badges. So basically you have to secure the total 10 badges, okay, from the unit 1 and unit 2 of the second track, that is prior programming experience track, and 6 badges from the first track, that is new to programming. And you have to for participating in study jams and getting certified, you have to complete the unit 1 and unit 2 of the study jams, because right now the Google has updated the first track and they have added the unit 3, okay, in the first track. So you don't need to rush up and complete that unit 3. You need to complete unit 1 and unit 2 because they were present from the starting of this program, and we have been guided in such a way that you don't have to rush up for unit 3 now. You need to complete unit 1 and unit 2 of the first track, which consists of a total 6 badges that you will earn on your profile, and the 10 badges from the track 2 from the unit 1 and unit 2. Okay, so make sure you secure those 16 badges, and you have to submit the form, Google form, by 25th. If you have, if you don't want to rush up things, it's up to you. Like if you want to get certified, then you have to complete this program before 25th of January, or the last day is 25th. Okay, so till then, does anyone have any doubts or questions, do contact us, and the contact details will be are also shared in the mail. And today, after this end of this session, we'll also be circulating the mails regarding other course materials or other materials that you would like to learn more. And if you want to if you want to get familiar with Android more and more, there are other some stuff that we have created for you, so you can go and check that out. And all those details will be shared using the mail only. And the recording of this session will be also available on the YouTube, and the YouTube's link will be also shared from the mail only. So if you want to share your journey or share your experience, or also post your accomplishments during the study jams programs, do use this hashtag Android study jams, hashtag Android study jams, and do tag the DSC PDPU, and you can also tag me, Krish Bhanushali, or Mihir Shah. Okay, and there are also some blogs available from which you can stay updated in this Android world, and you can also learn new things from other bloggers. Okay, and that's it for this Android study jams programs, and I officially conclude this of Android study jams program. Okay, so does anyone have any doubt? Priyam, you have raised your hand.
Yes, Vishwas. I just wanted to say that thank you for arranging this workshop because it was really great and you made sure that all the particulars as covered. Because for
Okay.
me, who is just going to start, it will be very helpful. And also same goes for you, Mihir. You really have a good grasp over the topics. And obviously, Vishwas, you are really good at these things. So thank you for arranging such a particular topic workshop because it's rare to have such workshop in our PDP. So
Yes,
thank you.
yes. Yeah, thank you, Priyam. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya.
And basically, due to some, we also had exams, and due to those things, we have to, postpone this study jam session in our January, because, there were several exams going on of each and every student. And due to that particular thing, our link was also broken. But it is, good to know that some of these participants of our program are also still enthusiastic and are working hard to complete this program. Okay.
Absolutely, it's totally understandable because we also had our own exams. So
Yeah.
it's obvious that you also need to shift your dates and you
Yes.
used to adjust everything. Yeah. So
Yes,
thank you.
for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. 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 Thank you, all of you.